My next guest is a woman on a mission. Her mission is to rescue language from the socialists who have attempted to hijack America. Welcome to another episode of Conversations. This is the show where we talk about anything and everything. My guest today is Sam Sorbo. Sam is an actress. I'm sure you've seen some of her films. She's also a mom, an activist, a writer, and a model. And she's here today to talk about a lot of issues, including her new book, Words for Warriors. Sam, welcome to Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you, Carol.
And I understand that you have fled Hollywood.
In a manner of speaking, yeah. I think Hollywood left me first. Hollywood's gone so far left, by and large, and there are pockets of resistance out there. There are individuals who don't drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. But and that's really part of the crux of the issue, is that the filmmakers and the storytellers of this generation and these past several generations are telling fibs. They're telling lies, and that's basically what led me to write my book, is these lies that have been propagated. I don't know if you've noticed, but you can watch a movie and you've got some really bad guys and they're behaving very totalitarian. They're dictators. They're clearly, Marxists. They want to control everything. And then some character says, well, that's because he's a Republican.
Right.
And it's so absurd. It's ridiculous, but they're the storytellers, so they can just make up whatever crap they want and send it out there. And you have young people who are watching these movies saying, yeah, Republicans are bad. No, those are not the earmarks of a Republican. For that person to say he's a Republican, well, he's obviously a wolf in sheep's clothing. And of course, Republicans don't get a complete pass, but that is not the standard for the definition of somebody who's conservative. It's the standard definition for a Marxist, leftist, progressive, communist, socialist, right? I mean, we've got now so many names for the same thing. Why? Because they keep trying to reinvent themselves and sell us on a new version of the same old tried and failed claptrap. And honestly, the reason that the book came about was I realized that they had done that with the word fascist. And right. So now if you look up the word fascist in the dictionary, it will say that it's right wing. There is no such thing as a right-wing fascist. That's a completely made up word, term.
Well, Sam, it's not just with the word fascist, because if you look at the left's political language, even the word unity, they have changed the meaning of every word. They have weaponized language. And I think we lose the battle when we respond to them as if they were using language in the same way that we use it. Because when they talk about, equity, they're not talking about, equity and fairness for all. And when they call white people white supremacists, they're not talking about white people who think they are better than other groups. They're saying that anyone with white skin is in a supreme position. And so there has been a weaponizing of the language. And I'm glad that, you've addressed that with your book, Words for Warriors. And I think that a lot of us have our work cut out for us when it comes to educating the public and also educating our family members and being strategic about how to respond.
Yeah, absolutely, which is why I decided to write the book. It's not enough to recognize that the left lies all the time. And I don't say that lightly. I can't think of the last time a leftist politician who was truly, a leftist actually told the truth. They lie all the time. And the reason is because they love the lie. They lie when they say they don't want violence. Very clearly over the summer, we saw a great deal of leftist violence that was completely condoned by the Democrat Party. And yet we had some violence at the Capitol on January 6th, and that was soundly derided because it was supposedly right-wing violence. It wasn't. And so, we have to stop having conversations with people whose definitions are completely wrong, completely, they misrepresent themselves, and they get us to climb on board because they say, well, it's all about equality. Well, that sounds nice, but that's not, their version of equality is not the same as ours, right?
Right. And, a lot of what I have done, I've worked on, the critical race theory and critical theory in general. And it really is the advancement of a progressive Marxist ideology, a philosophical framework for really taking down Western nations, the United States in particular. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party has been taken over, and they are applying tactics that we first saw in Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals, because that involved infiltration, deception, and manipulation. And then with the discourse, it's so dangerous because the media, not just the filmmakers, but the media uh, in its various forms, they are part of pushing the false narrative.
Well, absolutely. And we need to stand up for our language, because our language is our prosperity. Our language is everything that we have, is built upon the fact that we communicate with each other. And we have an entire political party now that refuses to communicate on the same terms that you and I communicate on. So, in debate, the first thing you do is you define your terms. Well,
Yes.
we've stopped doing that. The right is under the assumption that everybody's using the same language. The left knows darn well what it's doing, and we are allowing it because we refuse to admit that these are people who don't have the same values that we have, including value for language. And it's a really tough conundrum that we're in right now, because they've taken it already so far. But I just go back to this one premise. The United States was built on um, um, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of your prosperity, right? Well, the first of those is life. We have an entire political party that doesn't believe in life, doesn't believe that human beings necessarily have a right to life.
Yes, but we're supposed to be trusting them when it comes to the coronavirus and the vaccines and how they want to protect all of us. We have to trust them because all of a sudden they want us to believe that they care about human life more than they care about global warming and depopulation.
Well, this is a big problem, and I'm so thrilled to talk to somebody who not only understands it, but really gets it and can drill down to the fundamental issues. I was making a doctor's appointment because I did recently move and I'm looking for a new doctor, and I asked his assistant, or the person I was on the phone with. I asked to speak with him because I had a question. She said, "Well, just tell me the question." I said, "Well, is he pro-life? How does he feel about abortion?" And she said, she got terribly offended. She actually ended up hanging up on me.
Oh my goodness.
He called me back and he said, "I understand you have a question for me." I said, "Yeah, what's your position on abortion?" And he gave me this whole song and dance about how he doesn't support it, but in the case of rape and incest or whatever, the usual
Right.
carve outs, the caveats.
Right. Right.
And then he asked me if I was coming in, and I said no. And he said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, the person who works for you doesn't agree with you. And so how can I trust her with my medical records?"
Well,
Here's
that's
the thing, folks. If you have somebody, I just produced a documentary called Leaders for Life. And in the documentary, we had somebody who was saying, basically, you can't convince me that you care about children and human beings outside the womb if you don't care about them inside the womb. Because all the evidence is in. Follow the science.
right.
That's a baby. I didn't give birth to a toaster, and you're not aborting a giraffe. Okay. So then you just have, but here's the problem, Carol. We're not teaching our children in schools to think. We're teaching them what to think. And if you never learn how to think, then you will never be able to think yourself out of the problem that you're in. And that's why our schools are not churning out problem solvers. In fact, higher education is in a sense declining because employers are now looking for kids who didn't graduate college, because the college tends to put a cap on the thinking of the student, and they're looking for problem solvers. They want people who still have some elasticity in their brains to think around issues and come up with solutions for things.
I certainly agree with that because I have watched colleges and universities become like centers of indoctrination, and the universities are very open about orientation. Their goal is to foster the institutional values in such a way that by the time the student graduates, they have the values of the institution, not the values they may have been taught at home through their family, through their culture. They're very much focused on what they get from the institution. The institution has its own values, and I think a lot of parents don't realize that.
I would say most parents don't realize that. Why? Because they went to undergraduate. And in
Right,
our K through 12, we teach people college prep and career readiness. Those are the highest aspirations that our education, our quote unquote education system aspires to. Well, what is college prep and career readiness? What is career readiness? That would be that when you graduate college, you would have a career. Is that happening?
right.
No, not so much. So what is college prep? College prep is spend a lot of money on higher education.
You're right, Sam. And we're going to take a break. And when we return, I want to talk about homeschooling.
Excellent.
Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain is made possible by Cooper Steel, a family-owned business that provides the steel fabrications for some of the greatest buildings across the United States. 60 years ago, Kenneth and Faye Cooper founded their company in Shelbyville, Tennessee.
Cooper Steel believes in sponsoring Carol Swain because we believe as she does, you build strong, you stand strong.
What started as a vision and now a nationally recognized and operated company that remains true to its founders' Judeo-Christian values and principles. Cooper Steel is committed to excellence, responsibility, and community. Cooper Steel's motto is, build strong, stand strong. They treat their employees and customers like family. Thank you to Cooper Steel for standing strong with Conversations with Dr. Carol Swain. Learn more about our generous sponsor at coopersteel.com.
I'm back with my guest, Sam Sorbo. And Sam, I know that you've been an activist in the homeschooling movement. You homeschooled your children. Would you tell our viewers a little bit about why and how you became a homeschooler in Hollywood?
Well, I kind of think of myself as an accidental homeschooler. Really, what happened was the school was not serving my child in the manner that I thought he deserved to be taught and learn and enjoy learning. And it took me several years outside the system to finally figure out really what was broken. And what's broken in our education system is we are not engendering a love of learning. We're actually doing the opposite. So education used to be focused on teaching the discernment of truth, beauty, and goodness. Truth, beauty, and goodness. Now it's the exact opposite. There is no truth. You have your truth, I have my truth. Everyone has their own truth. What pronouns do you use, right? And beauty is strictly in the eye of the beholder, and that's how you can get a piece of artwork that's made out of manure. And have it lauded and have it shown in museums now. And goodness, well, my goodness, I mean, there's nothing that's truly good and nothing that's truly evil. Everything's still on the table. And that's what we're teaching our kids in school. I consider that child abuse because it's only when we discover the truth that we can be free. And we're not teaching them that. We're teaching them the opposite. We're actually enslaving them in a sense. We're teaching critical race theory. You brought that up earlier. Critical race theory is built on lies, and they are absolutely steeping our children in this. It's in the
Right.
schools. You've got Common Core. I go into Common Core in my book, which is over there, the green one. It's called "They're Your Kids,"
Mm-hmm.
and it details how false an ideology Common Core is. Because, and I say this, and it's laughable, but here's where we see people refusing to think. They refuse to think. Okay, what parent doesn't want their child to be common? It's baked into the name. And yet the
Well,
parents are like, oh, it must be good. The school system
right.
said it's good.
Well, I mean, it's
Why?
failed. Common Core has failed. And when we go back to critical race theory, I don't know if you know, I mean, you just have California, so I'm sure you know, but there are some states where they are starting in kindergarten to teach children about systemic racism. And by the time they're in the ninth grade, they are being told about white privilege. They've been told that Christianity, pretty much is evil, responsible, for much of the problems in the world. They're being told that capitalism is something that should be replaced with socialism. And as far as voting, there's an emphasis on trying to get 16-year-olds, to vote in some places, but also to train them to be future progressives, future Democrats. The political left, they've taken over the public school system. And it's great when people homeschool, but I really feel sad for the parents whose children are trapped in those places.
Absolutely. In fact, we drive past elementary schools and high schools, and my kids go, "Oh, look, mommy, child prison." But it is sad, and yet we've been so brainwashed as a society by our schools to think that we are incapable. In fact, school teaches you that you can't. That's the product of the education system
You're
that we
right.
have in the
It
United
teaches you
States.
if you're Black that because of racism is permanent. It teaches everyone, whites and Blacks, that
Right.
racism is permanent. It'll always be there. White
Well, and
people have to. Uh-huh.
also irredeemable, right? You can't
Right.
fix it. The color of your skin, what are you gonna, unless you're racial dolajal, what are you
Uh-huh.
gonna do about that? It's a very sad state, but more than that, the school system teaches you that learning happens inside a box with a teacher at a blackboard, and therefore you can't learn anything without that crutch, basically. You
And
must do what
something
the
else,
teacher says.
what they're doing also is that a lot of schools don't assign homework, and what they're doing is trying to, I would say, keep the parents from the children. And with Common Core, when they changed math in a way that the average parent was not able to sit down and help their children with their math assignments, even if they were in second or third grade, because everything had changed. And I think that's part of the progressive left's agenda when it comes to um, dividing parents from their children, separating
Well,
parents from their children. They get to do all the indoctrinating. And we know with the online learning that a lot of school systems had a policy that parents were not supposed to listen in on the lessons.
I mean, if that's not enough of a warning, and yet the parents just take it seriously. They're just taking it without any, because we've allowed parents to abdicate the role of a parent. They're not taught the role of a parent because they went to school, and the school basically assumed the role of the parent for the generation that is now raising children, or the generation before it. I mean, it's multi-generational now. You talk
Right.
about Common Core sending home work for children. If you have a fourth grader that comes home, "Daddy, can you help me with my homework?" And the dad says, "We'll do it the old-fashioned way because that's the way that worked for me." And the kid says, "No, we have to do it this way." And the dad says, "Well, that doesn't make any sense to me." The kid says in his head, "Daddy's stupid."
But
So it's the
hold that
destruction of
thought.
the family, Carol. That's really what is at the heart of all of this.
Yeah, hold that thought, and we're going to take another break. And when we return, more about this important topic.
Dr. Carol Swain's Be the People, a call to reclaim America's faith and promise, newly released in paperback and audio with a new introduction, is a challenge to all Americans. If you are serious about being the best citizen you can be, this is the book for you. From addressing moral relativism to reclaiming the future, you'll understand why Dr. Swain is one of the most relevant voices in today's culture war. Are you ready to reclaim America's faith and promise? Purchase at bethepeoplenews.com/books or wherever books are sold.
The Biden administration's executive order on immigration brings to the forefront one of the most volatile issues of our time. In this timely second edition of Debating Immigration, I join my voice to that of other experts to provide you with facts and information that will help you understand what is at stake for our nation. This edition offers 21 original essays that cover race, religion, economics, human smuggling, and civil rights.
Purchase at bethepeoplenews.com/books or wherever books are sold.
So, Sam, you had a thought that you were finishing up when we went to break about the situation with the parents. And I think that what's even worse than, daddy is stupid because he doesn't know the answer. There's been children that said, if you help me with my homework, if you don't do it this way, it doesn't matter if I have the right answer, I will be punished. I will be marked down if you don't do it the teacher's way.
Well, yeah, but I don't, honestly, I think the most destruction is the destruction of the family unit, the abdication of parents from their responsibility that's encouraged by the schools. And you have to understand, schools are socialist systems, right?
Right.
They take money from everybody and they funnel it to the few, the people with the children who need the schooling. So it's at its heart, it's a very difficult nut to crack. And I want to say, I always issue this caveat. I don't get down on teachers. I think teachers, by and large, are wonderful people who are caught in a broken system. But the sooner that we understand that this is a broken system, and that I've started saying this, Carol, because there's so much child abuse that's happening in our schools. There's pornography that's happening. There's sex grooming of our children. Yes,
right.
There is
Planned Parenthood doing it.
There's no reason for a second grader to know the word lubrication,
right?
in the context of human anatomy,
right?
let's say, right? Yeah. I'm all for teaching kids the big words, right? But it's a tough nut to crack, and part of it is that we don't know anymore what education is.
Now, Sam,
they have redefined the word education to mean in a classroom with a teacher. And that's one of the words that I go into in my book, Words for Warriors, because we have to understand our language has been so polluted at this point that we're losing the ability to think about these things. And that's a frightening prospect. So I would invite people, get a copy of my book, Words for Warriors, get a copy for a friend, buy one for a liberal, because there are plenty of liberals out there who just don't understand how far left the left has gone. In fact, there was I'm going to forget his name, but I think he's a congressman. He's a state's congressman, and he just switched from the Democrat Party. He's like, I just can't get on board with all the socialism that they're shoving down our throats now.
Right.
It's crazy what's happening, the transfer of wealth that's happening in this nation. We have to understand that we just transferred, Zuckerberg just doubled his net worth last year because of COVID.
Right.
How does that happen?
Of course. And the censorship. In the last 24 hours, I was banned from Twitter for 11 hours because I shared an article from an expert that questioned the government's approach to coronavirus.
If the narrative that's prevailing is true,
yeah, right,
then why are we prevented from discussing anything else?
I know.
If it's true, here's the big crux of the issue. And this is why I wrote my book. We have something that is completely intolerant. The least tolerant thing we have is truth. Truth will not tolerate the lie. And that's why the left screams for tolerance, because they know they're lying and they know that they have to get us complicit in the lie. And we have to stop being complicit in their lies. We have to call the thing what it is and mean it. And
right.
Don't try to make me call a man a woman.
That's right. That's right. And, tell our viewers how they can get in contact with you and learn more about your work, and also the name of the book that you wrote about homeschooling. I know I have a copy, but I don't have it nearby.
I'm gonna lean over. This is
Don't
terrible,
fall.
terrible podcasting. This is
Right.
my book on homeschooling. It's called They're Your Kids. If you go to samsorbo.com, you can get all my books. I've had so many people reach out and say, I'm not buying on Amazon. They're all available at samsorbo.com. In fact, I'll personalize them for you if you like. They're Your Kids, an inspirational journey from self-doubter, that's me, self-doubter, to homeschool advocate. And I encourage every parent, I've started saying this, I think that if you don't send your child to school and don't educate them, they will still be better off than if
I
they go
believe so
into
too.
the mind shackles that the school imposes. And look, there are some good teachers out there, and you may get one, but the odds are not great that it's going to end up well after all of the indoctrination that's happening.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for being on Conversations. It's great that you moved to Florida, but the rest of the Hollywood exiles are moving to Nashville, the ones that are conservative. So it would have been better to have you as a neighbor in Nashville, but I'll take Florida.
You're very kind. I'll see you soon. Thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for having me.
All right. I'll be back right after this break.
For those of you who would like to know what exactly our children are facing in their education system, this is a must-read book. It will equip you and prepare you to make decisions about your child's health, about your child's education. So I want to encourage every one of you to grab a copy of Dr. Swain's book and join with me and Carol on the front lines in this critical time to eradicate the liberal abduction of our children.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Conversations. Wasn't Sam Sorbo awesome? She is correct about the power of language and how the political left has distorted everything. Next week, we'll have another guest, and we will dig deeper into the issues that affect us, that affect our nation and our children. So see you soon.